Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stardom Cast, a podcast we talk all things about the fantastic, amazing, and spectacular professional wrestling company that is Stardom. Folks, we do it in a positive and what I like to think fun manner. I'm your host for this bonus episode. My name is Matt Turner, and folks, I'm sure you can tell by the headlines. You've asked countless times, when is she coming back to the podcast? Not only is she back on this podcast, but it's not covered by a paywall. It's not a what if. It's not a roundtable discussion. This is a free for everybody an interview. She is back, the most requested guest to come back on this episode, back on the Stardom Cast. One, Allison Danger. Allison, how are you? And thank you once again for answering the fans' request and coming back on the Stardom Cast podcast.
I'm doing great, and I'm sorry it took so long for us to get it all worked out because it's been too long.
Yeah, I think last time I think we did a what if or a roundtable discussion. But most of the time when we have you on, it's on a Patreon exclusive because either I have this idea, it might be perfect for Allison, or you have this idea, like let's just go for it. But we haven't had a sit down interview or basically a chat. They're really not even just a chat. Like we got some fan questions. I have some questions for you. So this is just going to be a basic roundabout chat. But it is this as we're recording this. It is the second week of June. Summer vacation has started. You told me your daughter is going to what, 11th grade?
Yeah, 11th grade, has a driver's license. So on vacation with the best friend. I'm dying. This kid doesn't need me anymore.
They always will eventually need you. My Lily is she's 20, and I can only really get a hold of her when she wants to see a movie. So we went to the movies over the weekend to see How to Train Your Dragon because she saw the animated ones.
Right.
This is a live action one, so I was like, okay, an excuse for me to hang out with my kiddo. So then there's Fantastic Four coming that she wants to see, Superman coming that she wants to see, and then she went to Comic-Con New York with me last year. Was her first year, so that's probably going to be our annual thing. But I could be wrong. Did I not see pictures of you and your daughter at some sort of comic book convention or something a few months ago?
I was going to say, man, it must be months because we did go to a comic convention. So kiddo turned 16 in February, and we wanted to make it a big deal. My child is obsessed with the TV show Hannibal. I don't know where I went wrong as a parent, but my kid loves this TV show. And I will admit, because I have watched it, it is a very good show. Matt Mikkelsen's awesome. Hugh Dancy's great in it. Lawrence Fishburne is Lawrence Fishburne. He's always awesome. So I highly recommend. You can get it on Apple TV or I think Shudder, but it's a really well done take on the Red Dragon series and Hannibal Lecter and whatnot. Anyway, so Hugh Dancy, Mads Mikkelsen are this child's favorite actors. And they don't do cons that often, especially they don't do them together. Well, they were doing the Seattle Comic-Con together. And hubby and I just put our heads together and we're like, how do we make this work? And he was able to secure us tickets. We used points for a hotel that was like walking distance from the thing. And we got to go. And it was so cute because when we gave the presents, that was the very last present. The present before was actually a prison jumpsuit that I had made to look like the exact same one that Hugh Dancy wears in the second season of Hannibal. And the kid's like, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad, this is so great. This is so great. And we're like, okay. And as it opens, the tickets to the Comic-Con fall out.
Oh, like a movie.
And the child looks, and I had bet my husband $5 that kid was going to cry. Not my kid's tough. Da, da, da. That kid looks up, big eyes, like big, like Puss in Boots eyes, tears, and then just starts bawling, just a hot mess. And I was like, okay, I know we did good. So yeah, we ended up flying out to Seattle. The child was so excited, did not sleep the night before our flight, did not eat before our flight, didn't feel good on the flight. I was like, oh, well, I'll walk you back to the bathroom. Passes out on the airplane. Just out cold. I had to catch my kid, put my kid down on the ground, and I'm like, oh no. Because my brain is like, first it's, okay, what's happening? Logically, it's probably a blood sugar issue, right? I don't think it's anything else. It's got to be nerves, lack of sleep, blood sugar. And then the other part of me goes, oh man, these people are going to be real mad if we have to take this plane to the ground somewhere over like Kansas. So kid came back, went out for another second, came back at the seat, just arms filled with all the snacks these flight attendants could. Every time those flight attendants, hey buddy, what do you want? What do you want now? Yeah, I got you. I'm like, can I get another Coke? No. Yeah, but end up getting to get a picture with Mads Mikkelsen and Hugh Dancy. They were very lovely. At the last second, because I walked the child up and it was just going to be the kid. And at the last second, that kid looks at me and goes, Mom, I need you. I'm like, what do you mean? I need you in the picture. I can't do this alone. I'm like, okay, good thing I blew my hair out. Popped my glasses, walked up to Mads Mikkelsen, puts his arm around my waist, and I was like, yes. Looked down, had forgot my wedding ring, and I was like, double yes. Yeah. So, but I can't tell you what he smells like, which was the running joke of if I meet him, I just want to know what he smells like. Because I feel like it's coffee, cigarettes, and whiskey, but I couldn't really sniff them. I'll send you the picture. You can post it if you guys want, but it's a great picture. And then we got to see like the what's the little thing they did a panel also where they talked about 3 seasons of Hannibal. They teased the 4th season and all that stuff. But and then we ended up not expectingly meeting Hugh Dancy alone like 2 hours later. So we got pictures with him and he was so nice and wrote happy birthday to the kids. So it's framed up on the wall. But yeah, that was a good time. We had a blast.
You can't beat putting a smile on your kid's face. I've gone to New York Comic Con. We missed, obviously 2020 was canceled in 2021 just because New York City. We didn't go, but I think I've gone 10 on the last 12 years, 11 on the last 13, something like that. So I've done, I got to meet some of the great legends that have passed on, like a Neil Adams, Stan Lee, George Perez, Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher. I got to meet a handful of years ago. So it's just like, I don't know if there's anything more for me to do. It is a nice hangout because I get to see the same people that I see once a year. So it's almost like a little reunion. And
right.
the kids always wanted to go, but it's just like, I can't pull you out of school. Like I can't pull you out of school because it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then usually it bleeds over until, by the time you get back and you're kind of jet lagged on Monday. So they can't pull you out of school. So the deal was, because their birthday's in October and that's when Comic-Con is, the deal was like, look, if you get a job and you complete your first semester at college, me and your stepmom, my wife, will buy you the ticket. So we went and I was just like, I'll have an okay time, and just seeing her face light up for all the, oh my God, Dad, this is crazy. And it was so funny because it's in the Javits Center in New York. And New York Comic Con, that and San Diego, they go back and forth on what's the biggest one of the year. They're always trying to top each other. So it's like, we only got to the one part. She's like, Dad, this is amazing. I said, oh, wait till you see the rest of it. She's like, what do you mean the rest of it? There's more. I said, this is only like 25% of what, like there's like 2 other floors, there's this or that. But she had the best time. So I was kind of telling my wife like a year or two ago, I said, I might, can New York Comic. I have a great time, don't get me wrong, but it's like, what more can you possibly do, right? And I was like, she's gonna go every year. It's well worth it. And you're absolutely right. You can't put a value on one, the price on your daughter's face, and the fact that she was so excited that she passed out on the plane twice.
So excited.
Was that the reason why? It's probably because of the altitude and lack of sleep and the fact that she didn't eat, like it's just kind of a mixed cocktail there.
It ended up being a blood sugar thing because the kid just didn't eat breakfast, apparently didn't eat much dinner the day before, like was so nervous the couple days leading up to it. And I was like, bro, I made food. Yeah, Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't really eat it. Once we got some like drinking food in, colors back, fine, no problems the rest of the trip.
Yeah, that's all that she needed. So, but I'm glad that was okay. And now, when you go next time, now hopefully she's learned her lesson, but make sure she eats.
And then I ended up randomly running into Chavo Guerrero there.
Wow.
Because I've never met Chavo. I've met Eddie, but I never met Chavo. And so I went up to him. I texted my brother. I was like, Chavo's here. Should I say what's up? And my brother's like, yo, he's a really good dude. Go for it. So I walk up and I was like, hey, this is my name. And he recognized the Carino and he goes, I'm also known as Allison Danger. He goes, I know who you are. Man, I love Shimmer. And I was like, what? Chavo Guerrero was familiar with Shimmer? And I was like, that's amazing. I ended up talking to him probably a good 30 minutes or so. What a guy. What a nice guy.
Didn't he train the girls for, was it the Glow series on Netflix? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I gave him my number. I said, if I can help you in any way, because I know you do a lot of the Hollywood trainings out there, like, holla at your girl. So
Look at you, you got networking. You might have, yeah. So you took your daughter out there to see people from Hannibal, and who knows, in 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, you may get a job as a stunt coordinator, maybe for Queen of the Ring too. So that's a
I was
possibility.
so mad that I wasn't a part of Queen of the Ring. Oh, I
Would
was
that,
so mad. Like I was like, I would have loved to have been part of the production. I would have loved to have been like a female Billy Wolf. I would have loved to have gone to the premiere. I'm like, guys, I'm right here. Like, hi. Yeah. Cause I'm a big fan of like the story of Mildred Burke and whatnot. And and then Tony was in it. And I was like, I just want to support people.
Well, let's roll right into it. Again, folks, if you've ever heard any of these conversations me and Allison have, it's kind of like an ECW show. We have a little bit of a format, but we kind of throw it out. We kind of just kind of go where we need to go. And again, there has been some really good questions that were sent not only this week, but a lot of our listeners, a lot of our fans have asked me certain questions, and I'm like, that's going to be one that I'm going to kind of save because I think Allison may be able to answer a little bit better, or at least a nice little back and forth between me and you. But you just talked about Queen of the Ring. I did not get a chance to see it. I know it's on the streaming services, I believe this week, or it has been out. Definitely a movie that I do want to see. I know Jim Ross has talked it up quite a bit. And I'm a big fan of the history of pro wrestling, especially before I was born. Like obviously I got into wrestling like 85, 86 when I was like 3 or 4, living in the Northeast, nothing bigger on TV than Savage, Hogan, Andre, so on and so forth. But I love hearing the stories from like the territory days or like the, from the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. So this Mildred Burke story is going to be right up my alley. But Allison, have you got a chance to see said movie yet?
I have not. So I wanted to see it in the theater, and I was traveling when it came out. And when I came back, I was like, all right, I'm going to go see it this weekend. And I was told they're like, yeah, it was like only out for like a week or so.
A week, yeah.
I was like, what? So, but yeah, I want to say it's on streaming. And I believe, of course, it's one of the services I don't have, but I'll figure something out because I don't think, is it Amazon?
I think it might be Amazon Prime, and my mother-in-law has that, so I might, I might,
my
bring me
best
in the
friend
microphone.
had given me his login because he had my I hope Hulu's not listening. He had my Hulu. I had his Amazon, but after he passed on, we didn't have the Amazon anymore, and I'm just like, I just don't want that many streaming services, but it's frustrating because Apple Plus or Apple TV has like Severance. I saw the first episode and now I want to watch them all, but I'm like, I have to buy them all. Like I have to buy that one, and I got to buy this streaming service, and I'm just like,
You going down the rabbit trail. Yeah, that's we cut the cord a couple of years ago and saved us probably about $100 and some odd. But speaking, again, Netflix, Queen of Villains. I know me and you have talked about it maybe about a year or so ago. And we're like,
yeah,
we have to do a complete review on that. And obviously, with your schedule and my schedule and whatnot, we haven't got a chance to. But did you by chance finish Queen of Villains?
Oh, I sure did. I actually was down in Orlando, and when I go down there and I work, by the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I need to recharge my social battery. So I don't often go out a lot. I'll do something with my brother. I'll meet up with 1 or 2 friends or have some coffee. But for the most part, I go back to the hotel room, right? And it had dropped, and I was like, well, I know what I'm doing this week. And I spent the whole week watching every single episode, and every day I'd come in, I'd be like, all right, who watched episode 2? Okay, guys, let's talk about it. And I would talk about it with like the girls or a couple of the different coaches, and I was like, this is so good. I thought it was really well done. And I know it's a more dramatic telling of it. They gotta doll it up a little bit. Her standing in the rain in the dump truck, pretty sure that didn't happen, but it was so good. And there was a part of me going, man, I wonder how Chigusa Nagaya feels about how she was portrayed. But then I saw Chigusa Nagaya is like reposting everything on Twitter about it, and I was like, okay, it sounds good. And now I really want them to do a series on her. So we can see everything from her perspective. Because she doesn't get the credit for being the badass that she was, and
Yeah, the baby face of things, and obviously we're talking about Dump Matsumoto, one of, as far as Joshi heel goes, maybe the biggest drawing heel in the history of Joshi. And what was really cool about it is like as it was coming out, as it came out, Dump Matsumoto was still getting bookings. Now, Dump Matsumoto, again, her prime was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Obviously, she has abused her body for art entertainment. So she can barely now, and they were very. She's worked a whole bunch of matches for Stardom. She did Oz Academy. They were very smart when they would put her with the other big heels. For example, they booked her with Natsuko Tora, former World of Stardom champion. And as part of like the big bad heel group, former Wedo Tai in Stardom. So it's basically like an 8-person, a 10-person, where she would come in, hit people with the cane, do her shtick. I think maybe she took like 1 or 2 bumps the entire time she was there in Stardom. So 1, it's cool to see her. She's getting booked. 2, she's getting a paycheck, and rightfully so, because the reason why her knees are that bad is because she's abused her body for our entertainment. I'm all about that. I'm all about nostalgia. Here's something else too, Allison. Every show she was on, whether it was Stardom, Odds Academy, or other wrestling companies, they drew money. Like if say for an example, I'm just using this as an example. Say Oz Academy normally would draw like 850, like that would be the average. Well, then they bring in Dump Matsumoto in, and now they're 1,500. Well, what's the big thing? That Dump Matsumoto's there, so she's drawing money. Still, probably 30 years past her prime, which is great to see. And again, you get another bite at the apple. And then again, here's something else that I know that and I know that if you have a legend in pro wrestling that's in your locker room, like we were so lucky in Ring of Honor to have a Dusty Rhodes, a Roddy Piper, a Bret Hart, a Bobby Heenan, a Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, that they're in the locker room. Guess what us young wrestlers get to do? Pick the brain. Hey, so-and-so, do you have time for this? Or do you have time for that? And the example I always go to, I was so lucky that Chris Candido was on a whole bunch of IWA Mid-South shows that I was on. And literally, as soon as I would cut the curtain, because he was friends with Punk, and obviously I was known, I was one of Punk's trainees. I would cut the curtain. He would literally be sitting there with a coffee in his hand and sitting on a chair. Like, hey kid, you have a minute? Hey kid, and he's like, can I give you some advice? I'm like, yes, Chris Candido, former ECW former ECW tag team champion, a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. You can give me advice. So it's really cool that that you have that ability where, like, maybe Natsuko Tora, Momo Watanabe, or somebody going to Dump Matsumoto, it's like, how can I get heat a certain way? Or how can I, like, this was really good, but maybe if you just tweak this, you might be able to get that much more of a reaction out of it. So I'm sure the Stardom wrestlers and the wrestlers in other show were kind of picking her brain, because she's, again, arguably, as far as money drawing goes, the best heel Joshi of all time. And I think my wife wound up watching last 2 or 3 episodes, and she's like, who is this person that they're chanting for? Because obviously when I sat down to watch that show, I know it's about Dump Matsumoto, but a lot of it is about the Crush Gals, especially Chigusa Nagayo. And you go back and look at that, and then I would go on YouTube and I would watch the matches that certain things were taking place, were about. And holy geez, Chigusa, that she would have people as cheerleaders chanting her name before she even hit the ring. So as much, and this is a question for you, Allison. You would know, you're the person to ask, because I had people that asked me this question. Like, this is a question for Allison on the podcast. As far as Joshi goes, is Chigusa Nagayo the best pure babyface in the history of Joshi women's wrestling in Japan? Because she's drawing massive crowds. Stardom's been doing a great job drawing massive crowds over these past few years. But you talk what obviously Manama Choya was able to do, and Aja Kong was able to do in the 90s. But tell you what, like, there's like 17,000 people in the Budokan. They're drawing a lot of money with Chigusa Nagayo as the babyface. Like, would you consider her one of, if not the biggest babyface, money drawing babyface in the history of Joshi?
I would, because Toyota was a great baby face, but like Toyota still had that little edge, still wore the all black. Like, I mean, she was, like you said, the cheerleaders, the kids, the grandparents, they're coming out for Chigusa. And what was crazy to me was when I got into wrestling and I got into Joshi, my introduction to her was the Gaia Girls and the Gaia Girls documentary. So I knew her as this big mean heel. So then to see her from the early days, and I'm going, no, that can't be the same chick. No, but I'm cheering for her. But then I watched the documentary and I'm like, but she's so mean. And it was so hard for me to wrap my brain around that. Oh my God, she was like one of the biggest baby faces from the 80s. And even moving forward, that still spans the test of time. And I think, like, a lot of young up and coming wrestlers, and not just Joshi, but, American, European, whatever, should look back at her, because some of these, like, kids that I see coming up, I'm like, you are just super baby face. There's no, you are that kid next door, the rah-rah person. Like, it's just instantaneous. You think, okay, this is going to be the purebred baby face right there. There's no question about it. And I think they need to go back and watch that tag team.
That's what I was going to say too, because not only was it a singles, it's a tag, and that's extra special when you're able to do it as a singles and a tag, because obviously her and Linus Asuka as part of the Crush Gals. Again, I mean, they were like pop stars. I mean, not only were they drawing tickets, but they're selling, they're selling records. Their hits are on the radio. I mean, there's people that are in the middle of the ring before their match, they're singing, and there's people crying. It's just like, wow, we didn't even lock up yet. And it's like people are just going nuts because they were able to connect. And it's funny because I was listening to Medusa was on Chris Jericho's podcast years and years and years ago, and he was talking about her time in Japan, because Chris Jericho considers Naomi Toyota the greatest wrestler of all time. So she's talking about that, and one of my biggest matches was Asuka, and Chris Jericho's WWE Asuka, and she goes, no, there was another one. I'm like, I don't know who she was talking about, and that was like 3 or 4 years ago that I heard her on that podcast. Might have been longer. Then I'm like. And then I was reading her book, and I was like, oh, it was Lioness Asuka. I finally connected the dots from the story 3 or 4 years ago that Medusa, London Blaze for the WWF fans, she had like a program with Lioness Asuka as like she first got into Japan. So like, what an introduction for her. Like, she's only handful of matches into her Japanese career, and she's wrestling one of, if not the biggest baby face in all of Japanese wrestling, whether it's the men on the two of them were almost like female Inoki. So like, wow, what an introduction for her. And I know you're obviously friends with Medusa. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Alice, did she not do your introduction for the Cauliflower Alley Club?
So she did it, and then it was sent over to a video done by my brother.
Oh.
It was filmed at the PC and edited down there. And because he couldn't fly out for it, originally Lenny Leonard was going to be the one to induct me, and then Lenny got very, very ill that week, and he was so apologetic. So at the last second, we're like, Steve, can you step in? He's like, heck yeah. He got special permission to do it, and he made this video, and of course he made fun of me during the video, which, you
That's
talked
Steve.
about the other day with
Yeah.
Mara about how the two Carino kids button heads in their own unique way. But but she was there, and I find Medusa just to be such a lovely person. And I think, and I could be wrong, but I think what endeared her to me, or me to her, was that when I asked her about wrestling one time, I never asked about the dropping the belt in the trash can. Everybody wants to talk to her about that. I go, talk to me about working with Aja Kong. Talk to me about your time in Japan. Tell me about that street fight with the boxing gloves. And she's like, oh my God, like, yeah. And she gets so excited. And she's someone who's so passionate about wrestling and so passionate about the women. And it's just exciting because, she's somebody that's in the women's corner. And she doesn't have to be. She doesn't know us anything. She's done her time. She's been around for, I'm not going to say forever because she's a young spring chicken still, but, she made her mark in wrestling and still can, but she's one of the, like Candido, she'll take the time to talk to you about this, that, or the other thing, and you just drink in that knowledge. But just Medusa's great, and seeing her stuff, and she talks about stuff with Chikusa Nagai, and she talks about how, she was green when she first went to Japan. She goes, they didn't have to do what they did for me, but they did. And I'm like, because, bruh, they see something in you, The rest of the world saw it too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if she told you any stories about her wrestling in Japan, whether it was, against the Crush Gals or, with Aja Kong and stuff like that. So I know that when she came out with her book, Queen of the Ring, like 2 years ago, I bought it, and she was doing interviews to promote it. And I knocked on that door quite a bit. She must have got about a dozen emails to me. Unfortunately, we didn't get it, maybe sometime in the future, but I would love to have her on. And that way, exactly, I wouldn't, if you're like, you get to have a half an hour with her, 45 minutes with her, you can ask her 10 questions. I think the throwing the belt in the trash would be like question 3. Like, but we really would, just because it's just like, whatever it is, what it is. I probably have, and wouldn't even cross my mind, because like her run as a London Blaze, the WWF, considering the fact that like they didn't have many women's matches. I mean, she got to wrestle not only at WrestleMania 10, but wrestle in Madison Square Garden. So like, there's that. She's wrestled in the Tokyo Dome. She's had great matches in the WWF. Again, considering the fact that there wasn't too many women on TV back then for the WWF. But even like I just went back the other day, I was kind of just doing something around the house, and I'm like, I'll put a random WCW show on, and I put Starrcade '96 on, and I completely forgot that the second match of this card was Medusa versus Akira Hokuto. So I was like, oh boy, Howie, like that would be a question. But yeah, I would. Again, if I had her on the podcast for half an hour, 2 hours, I would definitely talk about her stuff in Japan, considering the fact that, yeah, you're right, she was green and wrestling two of the most over wrestlers in the entire country, regardless of gender, and Lioness Asuka and Chigusa Nagao. That's absolutely wild stuff. Yeah, wild stuff.
It's crazy. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool who we connect with, isn't it? You know,
It really is. It's like so funny. I want to say I had a moment. Oh, it was Mother's Day. And Norman Smiley sent me a Happy Mother's Day text. And I giggled. And I giggle every year because he does it every year because he's just like one of the dopest people on earth. And I remember giggling, and my husband looks over at me and go, Norman Smiley just texted me. And he's like, mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, I'm cool.
You're one of the cool kids.
I have my little mark out moments. Yeah.
Yeah, we all do. You know, at the end of the day, you know, and it's so funny because we talked about this when we had you on the show. I think about it every time. It's like you take a step back in that early 2000s, who we were in that locker room with in Ring of Honor. And back then it was just like, don't take the pictures, don't be a mark. Now it's like, no, take the pictures, take the pictures. Like I do not have a single photo of me and CM Punk. I don't have Bryan Danielson, obviously was there. We had Ricky Steamboat, Dusty Rhodes, Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, Nigel McGuinness, the Briscoes, and that one, because the Briscoes were always so kind, and losing Jay the way that we did at such a young age is just absolutely so heartbreaking. So it's just like, yeah, take all the pictures, because at the end of the day, we are fans of this. We are absolutely all fans of this and super fans of this.
I regret never getting a picture with Eddie Guerrero.
Oh yeah, he was on those two shows. Yeah, he was on the very first show with Super Crazy, and then the Night of Tribute, because he won the Intercontinental title. Was like, no, I still have indie dates that I have to fill. So I think he came to that show with the Intercontinental title, right? It was him and Red versus the SAT.
I kind of think he did. I don't know. But I just remember him being such a nice person. And I'm like, hey, here it is. Eddie Guerrero, like one of the biggest stars on earth, like still someone who's so influential on wrestling to this day. Like 2025, he still influences the young up-and-comers. You know, I'll talk to young kids and they'll be like, Coach, what do I want to do? What should I watch? I've already been watching Eddie Guerrero. That's like usually the number one person they say is, I've been watching a lot of Eddie Guerrero. And I'm like, oh, well, guys, you're already off to a great start then. And yeah, I regret not getting the picture with him.
Yeah, so folks, again, take the picture. I saw X-Pac put something out on, somebody was saying something that if you're a wrestler and you're in the back, you're taking photos with the legends, you're a mark. And then X-Pac was like, I was on this show. I want to take a picture with all the boys, and I'm not charging because I'm a mark too. And if Sean Waltman, X-Pac, who was 20 years ahead of his time on everything he did, he's saying that, like, yeah, go and get your pictures. Go and get your pictures. Because again, we're talking about the regret that we had, and that's why when we meet you reconnected at that seminar, I'm like, let's take the pictures. Let's go. Yeah, take the pictures.
Did you see who I got a picture with recently? Back in March. I walked onto an airplane and I hear this guy kind of like gasp, and I look and I see a wrestling t-shirt, and I'm like, all right, that's a cool shirt. And then I look up, it's Shane Hagedorn.
That's right.
We were on the same flight from Charlotte to Philly. He was coming back from AEW, and I was going up to do a seminar in Philly. And he was like, oh my God. So of course he's up front. I'm a peon. I'm halfway back. And we're just texting each other going, oh my God, I can't believe we're on the same flight together. I was like, let's get a picture. And he waited for me off, and he ended up taking me over to the hotel too. But yeah, I was so excited because it's like, I didn't expect to see Hagedorn. And then Orange Cassidy was also on that flight. And though I was already leaving Chikara as he was coming in. So we didn't have a lot of interactions, but he interacted with my husband a lot because I want to say they had some matches together. But
I broke in with him. I literally backyarded wrestling with him. Like, I mean, we're talking about, I'm talking about before we were trained as pros. We would literally start wrestling in backyards. He was in New Jersey. I was in Pennsylvania. And then we were on some sort of forum on AOL. If you remember, that's how old we are, folks, on AOL.
Oh yeah.
So we decided to combine some of the backyards. And then we wind up knowing a buddy that ran like hardcore like music shows in like this warehouse. So we kind of built a makeshift ring. And we all started wrestling there. And it was like, who would have figured out 20 some odd years later, this guy would be the coolest thing on TV. It was always really cool seeing him. Like, I remember when he wrestled under this name. And I remember when I had a tag match with him that they couldn't find the guardrails, or the guardrails didn't make it on the ring truck. So what they did is they put caution tape. Oh, so this way, so the fans couldn't jump in or whatever.
Right.
And I remember we were doing a spot on the outside. He's like, whip me to the caution tape. And I did. And he stopped and he sold it like it was a guardrail. I'll never forget that. Yeah, I'll never forget that. Orange Cassidy's such a great. I know he's a little bit on the mend. I mean, he really, when he was the one champion there in AEW, not the Continental Champion. There's so many belts in AEW. They're starting to combine them. But when he had that major run as the United National Championship or whatever it was, he was putting on great matches, and it's just, you love to see it. It's like, that's great, man, because I've known that guy for a long time. And you like to see your friends do well, especially as talented as he is. And it's always great seeing Hagedorn. And I love the fact that he's working for AEW, and just such a great guy. He's always like, whatever you need, if we're ever in town, if guys are ever going to a show, let me know. I'll make sure you guys are taken care of. And it's just, he's such a great guy. And father too, he's got a girl now. And I said, because I remember when his daughter was born, and I said, he goes, what's going to happen? I said, she's wrapped around your finger, buddy. Around your finger. And again, my daughter, as we mentioned before, my daughter's 20, and guess what? That kid texts me at any time, and it's just like wrapped around the finger. But yeah, such a good dude. Now, Allison, here again, this question's been proposed or been asked to me quite a bit, and this is something that I definitely want to go down the rabbit hole with you. And this one question may take the rest of this episode. I hope not, because there's a couple really good questions I want to get to. After what we saw, now, by chance, did you watch the three-way at this past year's WrestleMania with Io, Rhea, and Bianca Belair?
My favorite match of the weekend.
Yes, I was there for it, and it was my favorite match of the entire weekend of all the 84 shows that myself and Rob and our significant others went to. We went to lots of wrestling in Las Vegas, but my favorite match of the weekend by a mile. It's at a point now, and again, you would be better fit to answer this than me. Is women's wrestling as a whole, not just in the United States, not just in Japan, bigger now than it's been maybe ever? Because even like when we talked about the Crush Gals in the 80s, in the United States, really wasn't that big. And then you talk about like Kong and Toyota and Hokuto in the 90s. In the States, really not that big. You look at what's going on in Japan. Stardom's doing great. Marigold, as we're recording this, they did Cork Hall, almost 1,000 people in Cork Hall on a Tuesday. So it's like Marigold's doing great. Tokyo Joshi Pro, you have Marvelous, you have Sendai Girls. They're all doing great business. And you have that in Japan. There's other independent companies like Oz Academy does really well and whatnot. And then you look on what's going on. In my opinion, on AEW TV, and I love AEW because one, the wrestling's great too. I just mentioned two of my friends that work there behind the camera and in front of the camera, so somebody's going to support it. In my opinion, the most entertaining thing in AEW is Tony Storm. So it's like,
God, yes.
So, and don't get me wrong, I think Will Ospreay is the best wrestler in the world, and my favorite thing about pro wrestling is the actual in ring. But Tony Storm as a package, she's the most entertaining thing on AEW TV. And in my opinion, for someone that's been watching WWE, WWF since '86, '87, pretty much religiously nonstop, the best wrestler under a WWE contract is Io Shirai / Io Sky. Which is weird because WWE, WWF, it's all about big men that can talk. Io Shirai is not a big person. She is a female, and she's not a Rowdy Piper when it comes to the mic. And she's the best thing on that TV program. So and again, I have a lot of people that ask me this question. I kind of would answer it kind of half-assly. I was like, I want to have Danger on the show to kind of elaborate on this, because obviously what you've done to Ring of Honor, Shimmer, certain things in Japan, and what you're still doing today, being helping pave the way and making women's wrestling bigger and bigger. Do you think wrestling as a whole right now in 2025 is bigger now than pretty much it's ever been?
Whew. I would say yes, in terms that it's a lot more mainstream than it's been. You see a lot of crossover, and um, especially women's wrestling. Look at the size of those rosters right now, and I'll put it to American wrestling, like major companies, because they are co-ed, whatnot, like Stardom obviously has an amazing roster. The women over there, Mari Gold, all that. But, this is probably the biggest female rosters you would see at WWE. AEW, they haven't been around as long, but, they had and still do have very strong female talent. TNA's women have been killing it for years. The knockout era with your Kongs and your Kims and all that. Oh my God, legends. And they really help set the bar. But I think it's the biggest it is now, and you're seeing a lot more crossover appeal too. Becky Lynch, didn't she just film a movie with Adam Sandler? And just saw Ren Sinclair on a commercial today for Slim Jims.
Deanna Purrazzo is doing it.
NXT girls are getting like commercial opportunities. I'm like, this is great. Roster wise, it's the biggest I think it's ever been.
Talent wise too, I think you look at Toyota, Hokuto, Kendo. I mean, they were all great, but it's just like, and we're gonna get into. I definitely do want to talk about your new favorite wrestler, Saya Kamitani, because you sent me a message a handful of whenever there's a match I think you need to watch, and I may not talk to you for a week or two. I'm like, hey, I hope everything's well. Here you go. Yeah. This is a little gift from your buddy Uncle MT over here. But you're like, oh my goodness, who is this Saya Kamitani? I need to know everything about her. And again, I'm a massive, massive fan of the Golden Phoenix Saya Kamitani. And then she turned heel, which to this day, I'm still, she turned heel about a year ago. And I had and you know me, I'm a very positive person. I love everything. Mm-hmm. The only time I ever had a negative rant on the podcast, and it turned out to be the best thing that they've ever done, because she was such a great baby face. Yeah. It was like turning Ricky the Dragon Steamboat heel. It's just like, I don't know if anybody's going to buy it. And she committed to the character, and she's the record houses that they're doing with her. Again, we'll save that towards the end, because that'd be a really good way to set this podcast. But yeah, you look at, even I had this conversation with some of my friends, and cheap free plug for my friends over at my comic book shop, The Encounter Comics and Game, Union Boulevard, Allentown, Pennsylvania. They're big, massive fans of American wrestling. And we were kind of talking about the biggest stars in wrestling overall. And again, you can like what you like. Wrestling is subjective. There's nobody that can deny the WWE is the biggest wrestling company in the world. They're number one with the bullet. AEW is number two, and then you can argue for 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. So we're talking about like the biggest overall stars. It's like, okay, I think Cody's probably number one, Roman's probably number two, and I'm gonna say maybe Punk 3, and then we're probably like either Jey Uso or Rhea Ripley at number 4. Regardless, even if you put her at number 5, which I don't think many people disagree, when's the last time that the top 5, 6 biggest wrestler was a female? Yeah. It never happened before. Like, as much as Trish Stratus and Lita were over, you had Austin, Rock, Triple H, Mick Foley, Jericho, so on and so forth. Then, the other people in different companies. But it's like, you can make an easy argument that Rhea Ripley is the 5th, maybe 6th biggest star in all of wrestling. So you throw that on there, and she's a really solid wrestler, but they're doing a great job putting her in the ring with the Bianca Belairs, super athlete, the EOS. That's why that match, one of the reasons why that match was so great. And like, she can talk, and again, she's so insanely over that you put that on there. And again, the loaded roster, that's Raw, SmackDown, again, NXT, the women's division, they're just nuts. And now we're seeing what they're doing with Julia over on SmackDown. I knew Julia would not be long for the NXT roster, but boy, howdy, she shot up quick. And that's another question too that I got asked, that I would kind of want to throw to you, Allison, because obviously I know you know who Julia is, and you spent some time over there in NXT. Did it shock you that Julie was over on the NXT roster only a handful of months before she got called up?
No, not at all. I knew by the time she got signed, like when we saw her at the front row of a show and she hadn't even signed yet, I'm like, yeah, she's not going to be at NXT very, very long. I figured her and Stephanie Vaquera, they were both going to be in and up like that. Because just the talent, and they bring something different. And they're both workhorses. They both have unique looks to them. They both have unique styles. And you, like, particularly with Julia, and I haven't worked with Stephanie as much, but I got to do like work on live events with Julia, and her and Ren Sinclair had a great random match on a coconut show. And I was like, wow, like this, I want to say it was Ren's first time working with someone from Japan. And I was like, play to her style a bit, you know, it's a house show. Let's have some fun. I go, it's going to be different. And, you know, it might be a little snug, but I go, it's going to be great. And Ren was just like, let me dive right in. This is a big opportunity. And her and Julia had a great match. And it just goes to show, you know, wrestling is its own language and whatnot. But Julia going up to SmackDown like that, not a shock at all. I think we may see a little more of that. Not with the girls, maybe not quite as often, but especially when you're bringing somebody in from another country, the casual WWE fan, they're not really paying attention to Japan. They don't know who like Stardom girls are or anything like that. So they got to have that quick introduction, but then send them right up because you know it's going to do great things.
Allison, can you explain to our listeners what a coconut show is? Because I know because I know that if I didn't ask this question in the comment section, then like, Matt, what is a coconut show? So
yes, because Nixon brought up coconut shows too, and I was like, oh yeah, those are those local Florida shows that happen with NXT talent that is not filmed for NXT TV. It's not a premium live event. It's Fort Pierce, Orlando, Tampa, you know, different, there's a whole bunch of different places they go. And somehow, and I don't 100% know, I'm assuming Coconut, Florida, but those were the loops that the wrestlers would do to get reps on a Friday, Saturday night. And it used to be a couple times a month. Now I think it's maybe once or twice a month. You go and you just do a local show. It's almost like an indie show, but it's with NXT talent. And it's getting talent in front of fans, getting them reps with a crowd, getting them reps in the ring. And they're a lot of fun because it's not as intense as, say, NXT on a Tuesday. Tuesday, it's, hey, this segment, seg 1, 2, boom, boom, boom. We got to get all the way through this. We got to make sure, you know, we've got action going here, but we got a picture-in-picture, but now we got a commercial. We got a hard out at this time. It's a little bit more relaxed when you do those shows, and they're a lot of fun. There's one place where there's a guy who owns a donut shop that just brings donuts to the building, and that was like my favorite place. There was like hot dogs and donuts for the wrestlers and crew, and I was like, yeah, I could do this a lot more often.
That was our payday back in the day.
It's so funny because Javon Evans comes from indie background, right? He's a PWF guy. And I remember doing a coconut with him, and I'm like seeing him getting his hot dogs. And I was like, hey man, you need your handshake too? He's like, coach, let's do it. So there's a picture of me that I wanted to say I sent to my brother, him holding his hot dogs and us shaking hands like I'm some CD promoter and stuff like that. I'm like, that's right. We still work for hot dogs and handshakes, you know, even 25 years in.
You don't forget where you come from. I want to circle back to Julia in just 1 minute, but you reminded me of something, and I'm going to tell you the story. And I know it's going to pop you. So you mentioned majority of the WWE fans, they don't watch anything else other than that. They're their own separate thing, which again is fine. But my dad, and I always talk about my dad on the side. My dad, he's the best, but he's a diehard WWE fan. Literally to the point when me and Rob were on Chris Jericho's podcast a year or two ago, he listened to it and he's like, is that all Chris does? Is he doesn't wrestle anymore, does he? I said, Dad, he wrestles for AEW. And he's like, what's an AEW? And I'm like, he's in that bubble. And again, I would not be the wrestling fan that I am if it wasn't for my dad. My dad's favorite wrestler is Roddy Piper. He's probably listening to this. Hi, Dad. But like he's such entrenched into that universe that every now and again when he'll come over, I'll show him something from AEW because he's like, whatever happened to Dean Ambrose? I'm like, oh, that's Jon Moxley. Whatever happened to Cesaro? That's Claudio. Because I used to wrestle with Claudio and I wrestled him a time or two. So I'll show him stuff from AEW. And then it was last summer. He's like, these girls are they're better than most of the men, which again, he grew up in the 70s, 80s watching WWF, which there, other than like Moolah, there wasn't many. But like for him to say that, like an old school fan, he's like, this EO is great. And he mentioned a couple names. He's like, the best wrestlers are the EO and the Kyrie and the Asuka. He goes, these girls from Japan are great. I said, oh, Dad, just you wait. So we were over the house because they like to try to do like a barbecue during like the summer. We just happened to be over it. Where I grew up, where I'm at now, is it's only an hour away, and it just happened to be on the same night of Money in the Bank last year. So I'm like, Dad, let's go in and let's watch the girls' Money in the Bank match. That's when like Io's doing like tombstones and moonsaults off the ladder. And I'm like, Io is my favorite women's wrestler of all time. It's like her, Mayu, because Kamitani is getting up there, and obviously like she's praised to have a massive year, but like Io is my favorite all time. And again, the fact that she's crushing it on the biggest stage possible is great. So then I think he came over a week or two later to my house for something, and I said, Dad, I said, I got to show you. And we're watching wrestling, as we always do. My mom and my wife are in the other room talking about cooking. Me and him are having a beer. And he's like, oh my God, the women. I know I say this all the time. And I said, oh, just wait. So I put in, and I know you've seen this match because me and you talked about this. I know you sent Steve this match. Showed him the match from All-Star Grand Queendom last year of Mayu Iwatani and Sareee. I was like, Dad, I have to show you this. And he's watching this match and he goes, he's a big fan of Gunther. And he's a big fan of like the big heavyweights that hit hard. He goes, these girls are hitting each other harder than like Gunther does, and this person does, and this person does. And Mayu and Sareee, they're not the biggest people. Again, especially when you watch WWF in the 70s and 80s. My dad's like, holy geez. Now the match ends, and of course, you wrestled in Japan. You watch a lot of Japanese wrestling. When you have these big main event style matches, those hard-hitting Joshi style matches, strong style, the seconds come in with the cold spray and the ice packs. And he's like, I got to ask you. So if you don't want to tell me, you don't have to tell me. I don't need to know the magic tricks. He's like, is that for real? I said, what do you mean? He goes, with the ice packs and the cold spray. I said, well, Dad, what do you think? He's like, I don't know, because those girls really laid into each other. He goes, I think some of that has to be legit. So it's like the fact that my dad's been a fan for over 40 years, and Mayu and Sareee in said match were able to blur the lines for him because of how much they kicked each other's ass. Yep. This really goes to show you just the two masters at their trade. Again, because I know I had to bring that up because I know that as soon as that match was over, I think Stardom put it on YouTube, and I'm like, you need to watch this match. And I think you sent it over to your brother.
I probably did, and I definitely know that I occasionally, when I watch Sareee matches, I'll screen cap her drop kick, the one on and I'll just send it to Steve, and I'll be like, one day. The running joke is that, and this is plays to my very dark humor, is that if I'm ever to a point where I have a terminal illness, my euthanasia is going to be going to Japan and taking that drop kick. You will watch my soul leave my body. I die. I told Steve, I go, this might be the only time I ever get streamers, but I'll be dead. He goes, you'll be dead. You can't enjoy it. I go, I'll be a ghost. I go, I'll haunt Corrigan Hall. But let's be honest, the only place that I'm going to be haunting is the Berwyn Eagles Club.
Yeah,
so much. I feel like that's where my wrestling ghost goes when I'm dead. But her drop kick is amazing. And I've watched her like do it live at TV because we were signed at the same time. And I got to work with her. She's so sweet. She's so adorable. Oh my God. Like, just the Japanese girls in general. They're just so wonderful and adorable and just have such good energy and good vibes to them. So
Allison, obviously nobody wants you to perish, but you did bring it up in your own humor, so I'm going to add on to it. You want that Sareee dropkick? What if we set it up with the Aja Kong hitting you with the back fist, and then you're on your way to the ropes, right?
The double. I'll take it. I told Prazak when Aja Kong came to Shimmer, I go, listen, I'm not in the match. I go, but you all better watch me because I'm going to slide in. I'm going to hope she takes the Iggy, gives me the back fist. I'm going to bump and I'm going to crawl my way to the back. And it's going to have nothing to do with the match. I just want to take the back fist because I've taken it from Amazing Kong. I have not taken it from Aja Kong.
Well, hopefully someday. She's still working. She still hits that thing like a gunshot. Like it's crazy how she hasn't. She's having a really good match. Again, we mentioned Dump Matsumoto. She comes in, she's drawing because she's a nostalgic actor. Like Aja, we saw her. Aja wrestled Senka Atoshi, who's basically trained by Chigusa Nagao in Marvelous in Las Vegas. Rob and I were at the show. They had a 4-minute match and it was amazing. It was one of the damnedest things you've ever seen. It was our 4th show of the night. We're exhausted. The show started at 11 o'clock at night. And there's like 300 people in this little building, and we're like, the poor Sanka. And then she comes in. She has the same color leotard as Chigusa Nagao. Obviously, Chigusa owns Marvelous. Chigusa helped train her. So it's like, that wasn't by accident. They had a 4.5-minute match. It was the damnedest thing you've ever seen. If I can find it, I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I'll definitely send it to you because that crowd was going absolutely ballistic. But what I kind of wanted to get,
Was it at the FSW building in Vegas?
it was at some new, you know, it was so weird because we sponsored it. We were on a banner on the show. We were on our logo was on the mat. It was this new building. Oh, geez, I'm having a brain fart. It was a really small building, about 300 people were there. They had a bunch of shows there. The Prestige show was there. The DPW show was there. They ran a whole bunch of shows there. It was an awesome venue. It reminded me of those old school indie shows where it's just like everybody's over, everybody's having a great time. It looked like it was just fun. It was fun for all. What they're doing right now with Sareee is, because again, she's a freelancer. Her and Sherry, who Sherry used to fight in the UFC, used to fight in the, they're building to an IWGP match. And Sareee has done a couple matches, you know, in Stardom, wrestling the people in Sherry's group. She drop kicked this one girl in the face so hard that her face kind of exploded. Like her cheek was like busted open. Yeah, with that said drop kick. That said drop kick. But I did say 2 minutes ago, I'm going to circle back to it, but I'm actually going to add to it because one, I didn't know that you worked with Julia, and I didn't know you worked with Sareee. So what was it like working with Julia, and what was it like working with Sareee?
So yeah, Julia got there when I was down doing like a couple weeks stint for WWE. So, and she, having done Stardom and having done Marigold, she worked for Rossi Ogawa, who I met when I worked in Japan in 2003. So I went up to her, introduced myself, and I said, we have some mutual friends in common. One being your boss was my boss for a week when I was in Japan. And then there's another guy who, Hashi, that used to come to Shimmer with the Japanese girls. And he's a hoot. But my understanding is he was also working backstage. So we had two people that we knew in common. And so immediately, like, we just clicked right away. And I got the picture.
There you go.
I didn't ask for it. She asked for it. She goes, "Oh, we take pictures." Sent to Rossi. I was like, "Hell yeah! Can I get a copy of this?" And she gives it to me, and I was like, I immediately sent it to like Lenny Leonard and Dave Puente and those guys. And I was like, "Ha! Look who I am!" But yeah. So there was a coconut show. I forget which one we were at, but it wasn't the donut building. That I know.
And
I remember because it was right before Javon Evans was going to face Randy Orton in that match. And I wasn't going to be there that week. I was leaving like a day or two after that particular show. My stint was up. And I got to like backup produce. So I was like junior producer on that. So I wasn't the lead producer, but I think it was Sean Spears. So yeah, it was Sean Spears. But then I got to sit and talk to them, and he was doing another match, and he goes, "Hey, just talk to them." And so I'm talking to them like, "All right, whatever we do, we have to run it through Sean. Like, Sean's the main guy on this." And so yeah, and we got to work together, and I was like, "You guys call it. Tell me what you want to do. This is what the finish is. This is the time. Tell us what you want to do. I'll give you my input, and then we take it over to Spears, and Spears make sure it's polished. It hits everything, you know, for the WWE, you know, because their rules are a little bit different, which I always have to refresh myself when I get down there. I go down there, I look at the refs, I'm like, what's changed since I've been gone? Because I just want to make sure, because sometimes, especially during like 2.0 leading in and right after, like it just felt like the rules were constantly changing. But I was like, make sure, I was like, hey, and the refs are awesome because they're just so talented, and a lot of them, you know, were wrestlers before and whatnot. So they get it. So I can come to them and go, this is a spot. Does it make sense for you from a ref standpoint? And they'll be like, oh, well, we got to switch this rule. Beautiful. So I get everybody's input in it. But yeah, I got to work with Julia, and I was like, she did so good. But she always does. But Ren did great too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Julia, she's next level. She's next level. And it's really cool that it was just like when she got signed to NXT, you know, her and Steph Back were right around the same time. They literally just, you know, popped right up, which this is kind of just a question for me. Why, if they know they're going to go to the main roster, why did they have them in NXT for a few months? Was it just kind of get familiar with the style or work on their promos?
I think so. I think it's get them acclimated to the US, get them acclimated to the WWE style, because it is, especially from Japan, it's a big difference. And it also gets them in front of the WWE crowd, but on a smaller level, and gets them those reps in front of that crowd, see how the crowd responds and whatnot, and then shoot them up. That's why a lot of people, like Jordan Grace, she's been on TV with TNA for how long? But they still are sending her through NXT because TNA, WWE, they set up their matches a little bit different. But like she walked right into NXT, and I'm like, yeah, she ain't gonna be here long either.
Doesn't hurt when you're working with Shawn Michaels and Norman Smiley and and Allison Danger as well. That doesn't hurt. What about Sareee? And again, I didn't know this. What was it like? I know you said she was a sweetheart, but what was she like working with her?
So I didn't do any of her matches, but I want to say the coach that she was assigned to was one that I was seconding. So when I first signed, I didn't just walk in and get handed my own group. I was backup. I did a lot with Brookside, a lot with Smiley, a bit with Amato. So yeah, she was in, I want to say she was in Amato's group. So then I would be there for the training, and her and I would just talk the best we could. And then she was so sweet. She always gave me a hug, and I was like, does she even know who I am? And I don't even know if she knows who I am, or maybe she just knew me because I look like Steve. But yeah, I would always get a hug and a really nice, like, broken English conversation. So yeah, she's cute. There, of the Japanese talent that's come through like the Performance Center, there is not one that I could complain about. Not one.
That's great to hear.
Absolute sweethearts. EO's awesome. Because I got to junior produce that War Games. So Fit Finley was the producer on it, and I was Fit's backup. So I got to watch how he works, and Fit, he's amazing with the girls. He really is. Like, him. I want to say there's not a bad coach at the PC. They're all awesome. And then there's some that work with the girls more, like a Norman or Robbie Brookside, Johnny Moss. Oh my God, he's so good. And then like Fit, just like when you saw big changes happening on the women's, like with the women's division and stuff like that, you can trace a lot of that back to Fit Finley.
Yeah, like 20 years ago, you would see Trish Stratus, who came in as this model, and all of a sudden she's working like Kawada. It's like, where did that come from? And like you would hear it's Fit, it's Fit Finley. You hear that with Dustin doing that with the women over in AEW. So that's great. Yeah. It's great having those legends that have been around the block 10 or 15 times helping out. I can ask you a question, and if you don't want an answer, you don't have to answer, because last thing I want to do is have heat with you. Was Sareee the biggest fumble in the history of NXT? Because I know we're talking about it. I know our fan base is like, Matt, you have to ask again.
I feel like the fumble was the repackaging of her. And that repackaging happened just after I got released. And so this is the NXT 2.0 era, where I feel like creatively there was a bit of a backslide to try and take it back to almost the pre-Diva days, where we have all these talented people, but like, let's not be afraid to shake it up with a little TNA kind of thing. And it's like, we don't need to do that anymore though. It's 2021. They're athletes. And I got spoiled at Shimmer, because nobody ever got booked on how pretty they were. Nobody ever got booked on how thin they were. They were booked based on talent. If you got talent, could. And so that mindset is always with me. It never goes away. And so when I see people being like, well, maybe if she wore something a little shorter or did this, I'm like, I immediately thumbs down. So when I originally got released, I kind of walked away from wrestling for a few months. I was like, I can't watch it. I can't hear about it. I don't want to know what's going on. And then somebody goes, they put Sareee in a schoolgirl outfit. And I go, what? And I was like, no. Because that just, no.
You let her, it's really weird, because and then there's a reason why you signed her. There's a reason why you brought her to and then like when Julia got signed, there were a few people that were like, I wonder if they're going to do with Julia what they did with Sarah. Like, no, let Julia be Julia. And one of the reasons why she's doing so well is they're letting Julia be Julia. Other than the fact that I don't think she's hit anybody with a shoot headbutt or pile drive anybody through the table, at least not yet.
Not yet.
That was big. That was big match Julia. But it's just like, and now Sareee is, when she got released or whenever, didn't resign or whatever the deal is, she's absolutely crushing it, as you've seen. There is something that I definitely do want to bring up because we were very fortunate. And again, we thanked you at the beginning of the episode. I'm going to thank you again. We had a great interview with the former Jakara Jackson, Mara Sade. Great job setting that up. And Rob and I talked off air, and I'm going to talk about it on air, obviously. That was the easiest setup for an interview we've ever had. We know people are busy and things get lost in email, but it was like, hey, she wants to come on the show, boom, 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 boom. And it was literally done within 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh, that was really easy. So one, thank you for that. Obviously, Mara has brought up Sarah Amato, and we just had Nixon Newell on the show this past week. She brought up Sarah as well. Now, obviously, Sarah Del Rey, for everybody that have seen her wrestle before. And this was kind of something that's been on my mind for a little bit. And obviously, Sarah very, very well. Do you think she's somebody that broke into the business? Obviously, she's doing a great job as a coach and doing a great job giving back to pro wrestling. But as far as her in-ring career goes, do you think that she's somebody that got in the business 20 years too late or 20 years too early? Meaning, like, her big part in the business was like 09, 010, 011. If she would have started or in her prime in the 90s, you would have saw great matches with Hokuto, with Toyota, with Aja Kong, with Bull Nakano. So with Alundra, with Medusa, so on and so forth. Or if her prime was now, we would see her with Momo Watanabe, Saya Kamitani, Io, Julia. Again, obviously, she's doing a great job with the performance center, and everybody kind of sings her praises. But that's just kind of something. That's kind of something because, like, when I first saw Ring of Honor, I was like, oh my goodness, she's easily the best women's wrestler in America, like bar none. But there was no really big person for her to have that great feud with, like we would see with Hokuto and Toyota, or Shuri and Utami, or Io and Mayu. Like, again, maybe that's for a future What If episode. Like, what if we were to get the DeLorean? But what were some matches that you would love to see kind of Sarah wrestle, like if her prime was the 90s or now?
If we had prime Sarah Del Rey today, I could see her doing great stuff with Rhea. Her and Rhea Ripley, those two powerhouses. Because that's the thing, like, Sarah was at that time where we were still pushing for women to be seen as athletes. Right? And that's exactly what Del Rey was. Del Rey was the athlete. Like, you can see the Bryan Danielson training. Like, she trained out under in California under Danielson. She spent time in Mexico. She spent a lot of time in Japan. She crafted it, and it was always about the athleticism. It was about the sport of wrestling. And, really the first few years of the 2000s, that we were struggling to get that. And then 2005 happened and Shimmer comes. I can't believe Shimmer's going to be like 20 years old this year. Oh my God.
We do have a Shimmer question. We're going to get into that next.
Good.
You just kind of segued it. Good job.
Nice.
Look at that. What a team.
I'm such a natural. But, like, Amato's style was so good, but the casual wrestling fan was not ready for it yet.
Yeah.
On an independent level, everybody saw her talent, right? And then she gets signed and she goes down and she becomes a coach. And you see that difference of what she brought to the table 2012, 2013 with that group of women coming through NXT. You saw the changes happening. And it was like, yes. But if we had prime Sarah Amato, first person I'd throw her in would be Ripley.
That's great. I mean, there's so many great things. Again, obviously, selfishly, I'm looking at the Joshi. I'm looking at Utami from Marigold. Obviously, Julia would be great. Mayu would be great. Shuri, Momota, Micah. There's so many great things, but just there's so many people that talk so great about her. And again, I spent a little bit of time with her in Ring of Honor. Just like, she is just so far above. And again, in that loaded locker room in Ring of Honor, she was one of the best wrestlers on a roster that had Chris Hero and Nigel and the Briscoes and Punk. It's just like, that's how good she was. Maybe just either ahead of her time, or again, if her prime was in the 90s, she would have made a ton of money in New Japan, or not New Japan, in Japan, all Japan women's and whatnot, because that her style. Come out like her and Kandori, her and Hokuto, her and
Oh
Bull.
God.
Just so.
And she did wrestle Toyota. I know that.
But I'm talking like 90,
Chikara,
93.
Right?
Yeah, I think so in a tag match. Probably like 93, 94, like in like a Cork and Hall or like in a Budokan or something like that, where it's just like where Toyota has got no problem getting like suplex on the floor, like stuff like that would just be. We might have just future booked a future What If episode. Allison Danger. Allison,
I would say real quick.
Sure.
If you were to look at today's modern American women's wrestling, the women who turned the tide for changing it from the cat fights and the TNA and really made those changes on the independent level, which eventually expanded and you saw its reach, touch television and all around, that Mount Rushmore, Amada would be the first person on there. She'd be the first and she'd be the biggest.
Because of the influence.
I don't think women's wrestling would have, and this is not taking away from any of the amazing talent from like the 2000s and on, you know, your Mercedes Martinez's, your Cheerleader Bliss's, all them. But Amada would be the first one on there and she'd be the biggest face on there.
Yeah. There's a lot of newer people that are getting into women's wrestling over the last few years because of what's going on in Japan and obviously what's going on in the big three companies in the United States. You know, mentioned TNA doing great stuff at AEW and obviously WWE, where it's just like, yeah, a lot of that is based on the groundwork that she laid out on the indies and then obviously coaching, you know, and she's going to be influencing the women's wrestling for a long time to come. Allison, obviously I can talk to you forever. And I do want to end this talking about your new favorite wrestler, Sareee Kamitani. However, we got a lot of questions, and this was a great question. It's kind of more than one question. So we got this, I got some the other day from Instagram. So this comes from our buddy Don over on Instagram. And his first question was, is there any way possible that Shimmer could come back?
It would take a financial investment. And on top of that, so many of the original Shimmer talent are signed or retired. And I think there is a lot of up and coming talent on the independent level. I don't know how we would book Shimmer that it would still have that nostalgic feel, but incorporated the old and the new, because a lot of the folks who came through Shimmer are under contract somewhere. But also it's financial. It's running a promotion is not cheap. And, you know, having to fly people from different countries and stuff like that. Shimmer wasn't a big money maker, but what it gave women's wrestling is priceless. So I think if we had the funds open to us right now, I would love to see us maybe run once a year, but you know, right now, unfortunately, it's not possible.
Second part is, but this is a really good question from Don. She said, obviously, probably not. If it's not possible, is there any way the Shimmer title can be defended on different promotions? And he has like the good old days, indie days, where I saw some Shimmer matches part of ROH, which we've talked about before, and across the globe. Since the Shimmer Championship does have a lot of history and has been held by some of the greatest wrestlers in this country over the past 20 years or so. Who was the last Shimmer champion, by the way, Allison?
Was it Kimberly? It might. I'm trying to remember because like we had one show in 2020. COVID did not do us any favors, that's for sure.
To nobody. To nobody, Allison.
And I'm trying to remember because it was at that the collective in Indianapolis. I remember me and Lenny were on commentary. I'd have to look it up, but I think it might have been Kim, because that was the Shimmer one that Zoe Stark debuted on.
Oh, how about that?
And then promptly went away. We never heard from her again.
Where by chance, where is the Shimmer title now? Like, you know, like where, like who is it? You praise
I
that?
have
Like
no
who
idea
is?
if Prazak has it. Yeah. I didn't get to care. I didn't even carry the belts through the airport, let alone ever wear one.
Yeah.
But
Do you
no,
really
as
want
far as
that
I
though?
know,
In your
Prazak would have them.
and again, this is kind of tagging on. Would you let PW? I believe Don is from North Carolina. Would you let PWF in North Carolina use the Shimmer Championship since they don't have a women's title? So, if, like the people that run PWF in North Carolina, if they reached out to you and Prazak and said, "Hey, we don't have a women's championship. The belt that belt is established. Do you think that Dave would let them use said belt?"
Do you
Money
know who
talks.
runs the PWF North Carolina?
No, I don't.
Colby Carino.
Wow. Well, how?
So I
Maybe
was like,
that's why
whoa,
he
I
asked.
wonder if that PWF was chosen for a
Maybe
reason.
that's why Don
Um,
asked. Yeah, look at that. How about
so
that?
Dave Prazak controls the belts. He's got them. It would be a him decision. So, and I think it would have to make sense. It'd have to be the right person. It would have to make sense. And we'd have to be able to build on it. I don't think we'd want to do it as like a one-off kind of thing. But yeah, like never say never. If I had the backing today and Dave's blessing, I'd bring Shimmer back in a heartbeat because it did so much for so many women. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm grateful to this person. I'm grateful to this person. All of us have to have some gratefulness for Dave Prazak because without him, Shimmer would have never happened. And I don't believe the changes in wrestling would have, I think they would have been a lot slower. I think we could have possibly gotten there. I think it would have been a lot slower without Shimmer.
I always say that IWA Mid-South show, Volcano Girls,
Yep.
that was the first time I've ever seen an all-women show before, and I was like, oh my
That was the
goodness.
test. That was
That's
the
what
show.
I remember you telling me that. I remember you
Yep.
telling me that at a Ring of Honor show, and I was like, "Oh my God, Allison!" They're like, "Yeah, that was because you guys drew really well." And I know it was a two-part show. I know that was like a Saturday show, and then there was a Sunday show. I think it was both at the high. I think it was in the same venue. And I want to say, I don't think I'm wrong, but I'm possibly with the main event of the men's show was Hero versus Samoa Joe for the very first time. So,
Funny story though, my outfit from Volcano Girls, it was Jimmy Jacobs gear.
really, you
Yeah,
forget your
I
gear?
like because it was leopard print. I like Jimmy. I like your gear, and I was much leaner back then, and so he's like, try it on, and I was like, I'm wearing it tonight. He's like, okay, and so I took Jimmy Jacobs gear just because I thought it looked cool, and that's why I have random leopard print tights on.
Oh, there you go. Finally, question: What is your opinion of Shine Wrestling? Did you view that as competition for Shimmer at the time? I thought Shine and Shimmer? I thought they worked together. Do I have that wrong?
We did not work together. That was created by Sal, the guy behind FIP, and it was an alternative based out of Florida. They did use a lot of the same Shimmer talent, but it wasn't one where Shimmer was connected to Shine.
I thought for some reason, because Shimmer and Shine, they were kind of almost sounded the same. I thought that maybe that was like your kind of like how FIP was for Ring of Honor. Like
Yeah.
if like Gabe would see people at FIP. Though that I did. Look
Yeah.
at that. I learn something new every day.
Sparkle was our version of NXT.
That's what it was. Spark.
Yeah,
That's what it was. Sparkle.
And then the
Sparkle.
running gag was because a couple of us had babies all around the same time. We went like years, there was like no babies ever in the locker room. And then all of a sudden, like a couple of us had kids around the same time. So then it started to become, there was going to be a pre-show, like a pre-show, like a preschool show, we joked, and it was going to be called Sprinkles. There was going to be Sprinkle. It was just going to be all our kids wrestling each other. And then Sparkle was the pre-show, and then Shimmer.
Allison Danger, always a pleasure. Like I said, I can talk to you forever, but let's end this talking about my opinion as we are 6 months into this year, the best wrestler in all of wrestling in 2025. Literally the person that you would literally stop what you're doing. Like, Matt, you need to tell me about current World of Stardom champion. I showed you a picture before we went on air, my birthday present for my lovely daughter. Let's talk about one Saya Kamitani. And even when you interviewed Mara, she was just like, holy geez, like Saya Kamitani, like just the aura alone. And then the bell rings, and you're just like, the entrance alone is something, and the bell rings, and somehow gets better. But like, what are some things that you look at Saya Kamitani, like, that's a next level performer?
It started from her entrance. Her entrance told me what I needed to know, sight unseen. Like, I didn't know that much about her. I saw her entrance, and I'm like, oh yeah, I get it already. She comes out like a star. She comes out, I already get a feel for the gimmick, right? I already get a feel for the attitude. Then she comes in, she's hard hitting. Her selling is really good. Like, it's a little bit more animated than you normally see with Joshi wrestling. A lot of times it's like a go, 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 but she takes those character moments. And I was like, whoa, that's a total package right there. I love her so much that if I were working for a major company in talent relations or recruitment, she'd be the first one I'd go for from Japan. Like, hands down, that would be the one I'd be like, this is the one I want to get a contract to.
She's a special talent on so many levels because there's very few Joshi you see that can both do heel and babyface next level.
Yep.
Her babyface, and again, it's been about a year. She's been a heel about a year, and the fact she's able to connect. But her selling as a babyface, she was Wonder of Stardom champion, which is basically like the Intercontinental title for like the WWE fans. It's like their secondary title. She was Wonder of Stardom champion for 480 days. She's the best champion, I think the white belt. In my opinion, the history of that company, she was so good. Literally the point where it's like, it's only a matter of time before they eventually pull the trigger and put the red belt on her. And I thought they would have done it as a babyface. And when she turned heel, again, I did a major rant on this episode, on this podcast, and I apologize all the time. I'm going to apologize for now. I'm a person, I admit when I'm wrong all the time. I'm very good at it. And I was like, wow, because they literally took what could have been your biggest white meat underdog, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat style babyface, and turned her heel. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. And then in 5 months, her and Tam Nakano in Sumo Hall, sold out Sumo Hall. No other wrestler in Stardom history, not a Mayu, not an Io, not a Kairi, sold out Sumo Hall. And then her and Tam run it back in Korakuen Hall, she actually broke the record for Korakuen Hall twice in a matter of, I think like 6 weeks. The entrance you saw was her and Suzu Suzuki in Korakuen Hall. And don't get me wrong, Korakuen Hall is great, but it's not the 4,000 people in Sumo Hall. It's not the 7,500 that her and Tam did at Yokohama Arena. So again, you're only a couple months in this heel turn. You sold out Sumo Hall. No Joshi's done that this century, I had 20 years, 20, 30 years. And then her and Suzu Suzuki, they break the record for Korakuen Hall in that red belt match. Then her and Tam have a match in Korakuen Hall a few weeks later. That somehow breaks that record. And then they go to Yokohama Arena, which, for the All Japan women's fans, that's where those massive shows happen, the Yokohama Arena, and they draw 7,500 people. So they broke Stardom, their all-time record going into that show was 5,500 people on a show that had Mercedes, on a show that had Mina Shirakawa, on a show that had Julia. There was some big stars, and Sareee Kamitani, her and Tam Nakano on top. And again, that just the entrances alone. Stardom was very smart because they put that match free on YouTube. And I said to a lot of my friends, like, if you only watch WWE or you only watch AW, watch the entrances alone. Because you had Tam Nakano, and her aura is phenomenal as well. And then Sareee Kamitani, where like she comes out of the stage, and what happened was and I know you've seen the match, they shut the lights off and they do her theme, and it paused. And I live in the middle of nowhere. It paused, and it was like, oh no, with my internet buffer. And it was the dramatic 3 or 4 seconds, because then when the light turned on, you had the smoke machine and the fog and just her with the flag. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a 5-star match before it even started. And then the match happens. And it's the best match I've seen in wrestling all year. And again, I love Will Ospreay. I love Gunther. I love, Cody. There's all these great, I watch a lot of wrestling. It's the best match I've seen all year. But there's a lot of people talking about Sareee Kamitani, not just the Joshi fans, but again, fans of wrestling, wrestlers that are wrestling, that have wrestled NXT, WWE. Sareee Kamitani is a hot topic. And I just kind of want to get somebody that's worked in production for, the biggest wrestling company in the world. I kind of just want to get some insight on what you think about one Sareee Kamitani.
Oh, I love her. I love her. I love her entrance. I love those big feel entrances, because they add something to the match. And I know we get them at Mania, but like there's moments where I'd like to see some of the entrances for like a big match feel a little bit more, not on like the Mania scale, but like what they did for her entrance was just awesome. And I have seen some of her babyface stuff. And of course, because I was first introduced to her as a heel, I'm like, oh, I like her heel stuff. But I watched recently like a video that kind of went through the timeline of her being a baby and what she went through in the heel turn. I was like, yeah, I get it. Okay, this is good. This is good. But she's a total package. I wish I had the power to get her signed somewhere over here, But unfortunately, to my knowledge, there's no women recruiters in any major company. I don't know if there's ever been really recruiters in any major company. I know Gail Kim was like senior VP of talent relations, but I don't know who's like doing the search, who's doing the research and then bringing it to talent relations. But yeah, if I had that job, that would be the first one on my list.
One of the great things about Sareee Kamitani is she gets everybody over in her matches, especially in her championship matches, whether she's Wonder or current World of Stardom champion. Is like, it's one thing to get yourself over, but then when you get your opponent over, you get the belt over, you get the match over, everybody wins. And that's what the beauty thing about pro wrestling, like when you're not selfish, pro wrestling is the only sport in the world that you can actually win by losing. And I always say one of the biggest stars in history of pro wrestling, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the match that put him on the map and his greatest match ever, WrestleMania 13, Bret Hart. People forget he lost that match. Yep. But it's like that's kind of the go-to. And Sareee Kamitani, the one thing that she does is the bumping, the feeding, getting everybody over. You know, you said like sometimes the Joshi with the bump, it's boom, 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 boom. She'll take like almost like a Shawn Michaels bump, like making sure like, wow, she really put that European uppercut over or that body slam over. Like she really made said wrestler that's kind of in the middle of the card or kind of get to the main event scene, make it look like she can kick the ass of the champion who is in kayfabe your best wrestler. So
yep.
Allison, great always talking to you. I can talk to you forever. I told my wife I would be done about 50 minutes ago to have dinner. So
I know I need to get dinner
she,
with the hubby too.
She knew though. She said, how long are you going to be up? About an hour. She's like, I'll plan for about 2. So she's smart. She knows enough. So definitely have to have you on again. Absolutely. She's my wife's the best. She's absolutely sweet. But obviously, again, thanks for helping out with all these, with the interviews that you helped us out with. Thanks for just being a fan. Thanks for just being a wonderful person in general. So Allison, before I sign us off, why don't you tell everybody where they can get you and if they want to book you and want to talk to you?
You've got Allison Danger at Outlook. That's the direct link for bookings. You can find me. I'm not a lot on social media because I think it's a cesspool, but you can find me on Blue Sky, the Allison Danger, same handle for Instagram. If you come to me on Twitter, just know I only look at Twitter like once a month. I very rarely get on it. I am doing some seminars coming up, so hopefully you guys will see that on social media. And I just wanted to plug one last thing that isn't mine, but I might have my fingers in it a little bit, which is the Who Runs the World Women's Show coming in Texas on August 9th from Athena. I'm very excited. She's doing an all-women show. She wants to show what women's wrestling in Texas is like. And like, let's be honest, she's one of the top women wrestlers in the world right now. Still killing it after all these years. So if you are in Texas, Dallas area, like get your tickets because I think they're going to go fast.
It's looking like a heck of a lineup, and it's really cool that she's doing something with all women's show. And again, we don't know if there's any, as far as again, if Allison finds out, because here in Athena, they know each other. They can say they're friends. If we do find out there's a streaming thing or YouTube, we will definitely be talking about on the Stardom Cast, Talk Yoshi, and the Marigold Standard. So yes, as more information comes in, we'll definitely be talking about that. But yeah, that is going to be excellent. Go ahead.
I will say that friendship only almost ended recently, and she's gonna kick me for. She spoiled Doctor Who season finale for me by accident. She sent me a message. She goes, "Hey, buddy, I think I'm going to start watching it again." And I click it, and it was like the biggest Doctor Who spoiler in like 20 years. And I'm like, bruh, I haven't watched it yet. I'm sorry, buddy. I was like, I'm so mad at you. Yeah. So I had to bust her on her for a couple of days, but no, our friendship survived.
You're a big softie, so I'm sure you forgave her. But
yeah, I played a rib on her like 15 years ago that has never been forgotten. I think it was more like she's like, well, let's just call it even Steven now. I go, okay. So
there you go. Yeah, folks. Again, as more information funnels in, we'll definitely be talking about that. And again, Allison, whatever anybody needs from us, that's what we're here for, because we're all here to make pro wrestling bigger and better, especially on the female scene. So I'm super excited for that show. Again, if you're in the area, definitely get your tickets, because more than likely that show is going to sell out fast. And as far as with stream, because I know people ask all the time, streaming YouTube, as soon as we find out more information, we will definitely get that out to you. So As always, Allison, an absolute pleasure. Maybe before the show happens, we'll have you on again and we'll just preview the show. That's something that we can do. There's a million different things. We can do a retro review of Volcano Girls. We already kind of booked our what if. We had the DeLorean, or for you Doctor Who fans, which I know you are, the TARDIS. Did I say that right? Is that what it's called, the TARDIS?
Yep, that's the
time
TARDIS.
machine. And
yep.
we're going to take Sarah Del Rey and put her in any place at any time. That would be a great what if episode. But we do a lot of fantasy booking on this show without us even knowing, because that's what we do. Folks, we greatly appreciate your support. Questions, comments, suggestions, anything you need from me, Matt Turner OF on the Instagram and the Twitter is the easiest and fastest way to get a hold of me. If you're like, Matt, I don't like to do social media, perfectly fine. Catch me on the email at thestardomcast22@gmail.com. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for another phenomenal interview with the always amazing and entertaining one, Allison Danger. We greatly appreciate your support. Can't do without you. Like I always say, just not my podcast. It's our podcast, because we're all together. Everybody's different. Everybody's special.